DMPCs are very often the subject of RPG horror stories. We're all very familiar at this point with the cringy Mary Sue who just ruins the game. Oh no. That said, I just want to take a little look at why this is such a common problem in games. Very often, DMs seem like they're trying to actually solve some actual real design or game design problem, or some sort of fear that they have about their game. I want to analyze what problems they're actually trying to solve using a DMPC and actually take a meaningful look at what they're trying to tackle and understand if we can actually use this rather cursed piece of Dungeon Master guidance for good rather than evil. I'm the Extragalactic Unicorn, and if you like talking about tabletop RPGs, let's get into it. First, let's just break down what a DMPC is. A DMPC is a story character, and as the name suggests, they are controlled by the DM. It stands for Dungeon Master Player Character, after all. They are a force in the world which ultimately drives the story that is not the players. Often they can accompany the player characters in these horror stories, but all the times they adopt these edgy lone wolf personas like they're trying to RP Batman or something, and they affect things behind the scenes before the players can actually get there. None of these are actually inherently bad given context. Story NPCs can absolutely try and move the plot forward on their own, right? It's the whole point of having a living, breathing world, after all. If the Elf Queen's land is currently being invaded by demons, well, she's not just going to sit around, right? She's surely going to go and do something about it. Unless there's a reason why she can't, because she's busy or she doesn't believe it's happening or something like that. And that's why the players are the ones to save the day. Having NPCs in the party isn't a death sentence either, especially for small group sizes. It gives players a character to bounce off that isn't them or one of the other player characters at the table. It can give them a different perspective, or it can give them new information about what they're dealing with. And as the Dungeon Master as well, you can also maybe clarify some misunderstandings that they might have using that character as a bit of a vehicle. I think there's something to be said here that an NPC's combat ability shouldn't be overwhelming compared to the players. I think we can agree that it's obvious that this isn't fun to play with. Video games are a great example where they give you friendly AI to fight alongside. The Marines in Halo are probably one of my favorite friendly AI companions to have alongside me. But they're not going to carry the entire game. They're just there as set dressing to make a fight look bigger than it actually is, or to just give you a sense of having people that you're fighting alongside, or give you an objective to maybe keep alive or something like that. They're a narrative piece. They're not necessarily supposed to be a thing that wins a fight for the player characters. There's one notable exception, I think, where you're using a character as kind of a mentor figure or something like that, as combat training wheels almost. If it's the player's first session, you can kind of show them, hey, look, guys, it's combat now. I got a 20 on my initiative roll, which means I'm going first. What did you guys get? Okay, this is the initiative roll. I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna move this a number of spaces because that's the number of spaces I can move, and that's the number of spaces you can move too. Isn't that convenient? And now I'm gonna try and kill the Goblin King by rolling this dice. Do you see this dice that I am rolling? Oh no, I'm trying to get this particular number, and I didn't. But you need to go and get that number, and then you can roll this dice, and then you can do damage to the Goblin King. All right, did you see that? Now it's your turn. Right, do you see what I'm getting at, right? The important thing, though, to remember is that these training wheels have to come off, and at some point the players are going to have to just ride the bike by themselves. So instead of the literal interpretation of what is happening with the NPCs, we instead have to kind of fall back to that emotional interpretation. And I think this can kind of be summed up quite powerfully as the DM is playing their own game. They're leaving us out of the story, and they should have just wrote a book. And that feeling goes beyond the DM just being on both sides of the table and controlling friendly NPCs and enemy NPCs, or necessarily the DM driving the plot forward because something happens that the players have to react to or go and act on. A DMPC is actively taking players' agency away. It's never fun to be told, right, that you can't do something because, well, my toy is better than yours and it can, so ha! So I think there's a couple of simple rules that we can set forward that will solve a lot of these kind of common problems. First off, the players are the heroes, or the villains of the story, depending if you're running a villain campaign or something like that. The story is ultimately about them. If an NPC is critical to the plot, their fate is not decided by themselves, it is decided by the results of the player's actions, or critically, their inaction as well. And inaction is critical to understand because if the players don't care, you can't make them care. Beyond just telling them what the story is and what might happen, and if they don't decide to take up that piece of the story thread, they are not going to take up that piece of the story thread. You should let them not pick it up, and then let them live with the consequences of those actions. This is another critical thing with DMPCs. They're often used as a way to make the players care about any given quest. Come on, help me come and reclaim my homeland. But if you leave the players asking why they should care, then you've missed a step. Connecting your player characters to the quest is very important, and you can't do that by just showing them a cool character and expecting them to give a damn, right? Because in their mind, they're all cool characters too. So you need to kind of understand what the motivations for those characters are. Are they actually altruistic, and are they just willing to help like that? Are they mercenaries? Do they need gold? Do they need to be paid? But the most powerful connection of all is an actual personal character connection. If one or all of these characters have a pre-existing relationship with this NPC, then you can understand why somebody at the table can reasonably process the logic of why they are supposed to care about this person, and therefore they are supposed to be willing to go and help them. You're still going to have to make it interesting, of course, but at that point we're just talking about how to make a fun campaign, right? And as we sort of said before, powerful NPCs can be involved, but there always needs to be a reason why they kind of can't solve the problem. Otherwise, they just go and solve it, right? If your world is full of competent people, then you're going to have a long list of competent people who can solve the problem who are not the player characters, right? And you have to consider at that point why the players are even involved, because that's going to be the question that they're asking themselves. And if you're answering that question, you're probably not making a great adventure. Because maybe these powerful characters just don't know what the problem is. Maybe they're busy with something else, or they're actively working to try and solve the problem, but the solution that they're working on is wrong, and they believe it's right, but it is in fact wrong, and the player characters are the ones who are able to see why it's wrong, but they just can't convince these other powerful NPCs that their way of thinking is the correct way, right? Maybe the uber god character that you've got just can't get involved because it'll break the lore of, I don't know, heavenly Deus Ex Machina or whatever, right? It doesn't matter really what the reason is why they can't get involved. The important thing is that the players are allowed to be the active participants in whatever the story is. They are allowed to shape the story as much as you are, because you are allowed to shape the story too. I mean, of course you are. You made the whole thing, right? You built it so that the players could shape it. You built the template almost. Because then the players are the ones who come along and they add their own unique touches, unique to that particular campaign session. It's not just yours at that point, it's all of your stories combined, and that's the really beautiful bit about tabletop RPGs. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I am the Extragalactic Unicorn. If you enjoy little videos like this, feel free to give it a like and also subscribe for some more. I like talking about tabletop RPGs on this channel, and I also like to do other little things too, so keep an eye out for various random YouTuber shenanigans, I suppose. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.